Hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll just wait one more minute to see if anybody else shows up. But in the meantime, we have a question for you to put in the side chat. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself by adding your name and where you're coming from, and if you know what land you're seated on at the moment, go ahead and add that into the chat. That would be great, so we can see who's here. Welcome, Stephanie. Go ahead, everybody, if you'll just add your name and what land you're tuning in from. There we go. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and add mine. Welcome. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So settle in. This is going to be really fun, interesting. We've already had some laughs before everybody came on, so I expect good things. I'm going to start with an opening prayer. So if everybody wants to just settle in and whatever you want to do for the opening prayer, that is fine. Oh, a couple of deep breaths. Thank you, Creator, for bringing us here today with open hearts and open minds and open spirits as we sit and imagine all of the here and the things that we're about to learn. Thinking about those community members that we're working with and wanting so desperately to help them, and wondering if maybe some peacemaking tools would help. Please fill our hearts with all of the energy that we need, all of the patience that we need to take all of this information in, that we listen carefully to the words that our speakers have to offer today. Thank you, Creator, for this moment, for gathering us here today. Nothing but good things, nothing but good things, but nothing but good things can happen. Oh. So again, thank you and welcome. It's so good to see everybody here today, at least your name in chat, right? I'd like to introduce Maija West. Maija West is the founder of HRI and our funding agency, but she helps us by raising money so that we can do these gatherings in a good way. So Maija.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for the introductions. As Charlene has said, I am one of the co-founders of the Healing and Reconciliation Institute, one of the sponsors for today. We are a nonprofit consulting firm. We work towards a more resilient future by bridging Indigenous and non-Indigenous perspectives, and we address historical and ongoing harms by facilitating a framework for repair. If you'd like to support our work, we invite you to visit our website and help support our Indigenous speakers that are here today to join us all. In addition, we're really, really appreciative and thankful to our Future First as an additional sponsor of ours. And we'll put their website in the link as chat as window as well. And we invite you to learn more about their mission and their goals. And we thank them so much for their support of our work. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you all.
Thank you, Maija. And for the most part, we want to give all of our time as much as possible to the panelists that we have today. We have some really special people. So I am basically just going to give you their names and where they're from, and then I'll give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves. And each of them will have 10 to 15 minutes to share some great things, either a strategy or how they're using peacemaking in their community. So today we have Christie Chapman, and she represents the Zuni Nation. We have Rainey Njadi, and she's of the Mescalero Apache Nation. And then we have Honorable Cheryl Fairbanks from the Tlingit Haida Nation, and she is a Supreme Court Justice. So we're really happy that she's able to take the time to be with us today. So to get started, we're gonna go to Christie Chapman. So Christie, would you like to introduce yourself and then go ahead and use this time. So you'll have 10 to 15 minutes to share. And then, by the way, everybody will have a question and answer period after everybody has a chance to speak. Christie.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Charlene. Christie Chapman. My name is Christie. I'm from the Pueblo of Zuni. I have my maternal clans are Eagle, and my father's clan is Turkey. Zuni is a matrilineal society, and so we go by our mother's side of the our clans. I want to share with you today what was lost within me but was found of all places in law school, and that is in our Zuni way what we call Hotnawan Haidoshnane. Hotnawan Haidoshnane, in a nutshell, putting things together, is our way, our laws, and our customs. And with you today, just want to share with you our peacemaking in terms of Indigenous governance. Our way right now, in general, has been questioned, but peacemaking understanding is the beginning, is what I want to share with you guys about. Next slide, please. So before I begin, I have my roots within these two individuals. The individual on my left is Bawikati. He was my great grandfather, and Tsaisitiza on the right is my great grandmother. From them, they both raised 7 children, and they raised us with our ways of knowing, our laws, our core values, and central to those tenets are nurturing our young, remembering our language, respecting one another, and sharing our wisdom with the young. And that encompasses a lot in terms of Indigenous governance. What I know is what I've learned from them. And again, it was reawakened while in law school. I do have to give credit to them and those who are still present for allowing me to be able to be here with you guys and to present not only as a peacemaker, but as someone who has a background in nursing and someone now with a background in the law. And I really cannot hone in on the importance of what Bawikati and Tsaisitiza had taught my grandparents. Thinking back on the land and how they raised their kids, everything always started off in prayer, whether it was sitting down to eat, whether it was going out there to plant, whether it was beginning ceremony, whatever that was, everything started with prayer, and the sacredness of prayer was always stressed to all of us. Today, you see the impacts of contact, and you see a lot of those values, those things that have been shared down, kind of dwindling away in our community with what Bawikati and Zaisihti's taught was really the importance of community. Today we see a lot of individualism, and though that is important and it is respected, when it comes down to individuals hurting or harming others, today we have an adversarial system where it can be ugly and messy, and there's no healing or there's no justice, because one side is still hurting from the effects of whatever might have been done, that what might have been how they may have been wronged. And next slide, please. When we think of our communities, in my community in Zuni, we call ourselves Ashui. In general, I think in all Native communities, Native American communities, we have that sense of community, where in our Zuni way, we call it, this is how we are supposed to be. When we compare that to American ways, it's more about individualism, the I, me. In our Ashui way, and again, that general concept in our Native communities is cooperation. And again, we compare that to American Western ways, and it's more about competition. And just putting these together in our Native American communities, it's always about relatedness, our relationships. In our Zuni way, we call that how we're related. And when we look at Western ways, we see that it's more about autonomy. And in law school, that's where I really felt that collide, the way
Hi, Christie. It seems like you might have froze.
Christy, I wonder if you turn off your video, if we could hear you better. Oh, she left. Since we work so closely together, Charlene, if we could see the next slide, I could probably pinch hit on the next slide.
That sounds great. Thank you, Ms. Cheryl.
And so we really believe that sovereignty begins at home, that there's a lot we can do within our own internal sovereign structures, communities, by honoring our own Indigenous ways, our way of life, our laws, especially our elders and our ancestors and our children. And that's where we get the wisdom and the knowledge from them. And we always say Ganesh Chish to our ancestors, especially our grandparents. Next. And we wanted to highlight the boarding school era because this is a picture of our grandparents and our great-grandparents, and they were all sent away to boarding school. We're all still products of that and that historical trauma that has resulted. And so paying attention to that, especially in this era where Deb Holland has the boarding school report out. And so that resulted in a lot of historical trauma. And we now have ICWA, and that's the new boarding school where kids are still being removed from our communities. Next. And then this is on the left is the process, and on the right are guidelines. And this has evolved over many, many years, and it changes. And it's really important that it's not a one size fits all, but everyone adapts the process or the guidelines to their own community. And so generally the process is we always open with prayer, with the purpose of the session, whether it's a celebration, peacemaking, or an issue, child custody, probate. I call it the sovereignty circle when leaders are having issues. And the round one is always introductions. Even though people know each other, you get to hear the voice and you get people to help you set that sacred space and why we are here. And then the round two is really the position of the parties, talking things out, clarifying the issue. In round three, questions are allowed after everyone has an opportunity to speak. And then round four is, if it's an issue circle, we always have a recess to let the parties come up with their own solution. So it's really a solution-oriented process. And round five is back to the circle and the reaffirmation of what the resolution is. And then, of course, the closure is always in prayer. And the guidelines on the right, be tough on the issue, but gentle on the person. Sometimes in our communities, we're tough on the person. We forgot what the issue was. And so it's really about holding each other up. And the rule of respect is really the important rule. I think that's consistent. That's kind of like a thread throughout all of our Indigenous communities, is that rule of respect. And especially respect for yourself, the elders, and the others. And then the agree to disagree. We really had to focus on that because all of a sudden we were in peacemaking mode and everyone was afraid to disagree. And we're all sitting around holding hands, singing sunshine songs, and that wasn't working. We're not getting the depth to what the issues were, but we added with respect. So one of the judges in New Mexico, Monica Zamora, had us add that with respect on there. So it's really good to agree to disagree early on, because that's what peacemaking is about. And so we're really understanding and getting clarity with what the issues are. And then speaking with care and respect, only one person talks at a time. And we use the basket. We pass the basket as the talking tool. And here's a beautiful basket that we used in Pokagon. It's a strawberry basket, but we have these baskets that we use. This one was used up at Ho Chunk. And so silence and pauses are okay. And I used to feel a little bit uncomfortable with that, but I got more into it because being a lawyer, you pause 1 minute and I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to give you my position, whether you like it or not. But in Indian country, in our Indigenous communities, there was a lot of silence. And within that silence, the space between the notes, you get some of the answers, you get the music. And then listening well and with respect. Listening is really valued in peacemaking. And it's really almost more important than the talking part. And then the consensus is a skill that is absolutely necessary with peacemaking. And it's building off of one another's ideas, building off the discussion. Sometimes it's about apologies and forgiveness. And it's really coming up with a resolution. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's something we can all live with and we can all support. And passing is okay. So if you don't feel like, I was in a peacemaking and someone just wanted me to speak and I thought, I'm not ready to speak, and so usually I'm ready, but I just wasn't. It was such a tough issue for me. So it's okay to pass. And then you can get it back, the basket back, if you want. Next. I
It
don't know
looks
if she
like
has
Christie
anything.
might be back.
Oh, good. Okay.
Are you back?
Yes, and I'm so sorry about that. So thank you, Cheryl, for taking the lead, and just want to chime back in on those things as far as peacemaking and where we learned that from. It's always been within us, bringing back the wisdom of our elders in resolving disputes is what we see in the color and life that we see. I'm showing you this photo. I know that the boarding school photo was shared. And when we lose that, when we lose ourselves, we're colorless. we're what that term is called, assimilated. But when we're bringing in our indigenous processes, we have that resilience, we have that life coming back, and we're reaffirming those things that have been passed on for generations and generations. Next slide. And what I really love about peacemaking is it is really a symbol of resiliency. Using peacemaking reaffirms and it respects those things that have been passed down to us. It restores our indigenous ways, and you're able to educate within a circle. And most importantly, it does bring back our sovereignty, our ways, our laws, our customs and traditions, and bringing that spirituality into finding solutions to an issue or a problem. And it is that indigenous collective wisdom. And with that, there's always healing when you're sharing things in circle with laughter and love. And most importantly, unlike an adversarial system or in the court where you have two people fighting, it's inclusive and includes members who are impacted by whatever that problem or issue is. And with peacemaking as well, you're including your environment, not only the land and who gifted to us, but you're also including our young ones. And peacemaking also brings that nurturing of our young, or those core values that have been passed down to us. Peacemaking also really acknowledges our cultural ways, and sharing our wisdom really engages our youth. We have young people wanting this option of resolving issues and disputes. Next slide. So I just want to go back to my Zuni way in where I've come in this process of learning our ways. And there's a quote that I like, which is now being passed on to our Zuni students. And it says, "When you must aho again, when iyan sa tanaw, tonte wan ilapa, tonte wan ukonte wan uknawa." And it really goes to being honest and trustworthy to one another. We'll help one another. It's your turn, it's my turn. And right now it's our turn as far as sharing this peacemaking process. Make it your own, make it what you know, what's within your DNA. Next slide. Next slide. And this is my people, just the resilience of what has been passed on from generations to generation. These are the Zuni Ola maidens. They have shared this, the beauty of what's been shared from one generation to the next. We see the early photos, the 80s, 90s photos to now. Next slide. And this is just a picture of one of our pottery, Zuni pottery. Pottery for me is symbolic of the basket. It takes each coil when you make a pot to build this beautiful pot. And when a coil is missing, you get a lopsided pot. But the pot, it really carries all those issues, those heaviness that you bring to circle. And when you're able to talk things out, what you have is solutions developed by consensus to create this beautiful representation of what comes out when peacemaking is used. With that, I just want to close. And next slide. Just thank you all for this time. And I'm sorry my phone got too hot and it dropped. But I just want to say to you guys, thank you and well wishes to you all, and may you all have a blessed day. And I will turn it over to Miss Rainey, and my apologies, but I will be seeing all of you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. I just want to be Rainey, before you go, I just want to remind everybody that we do have the Q&A function. So if you think of any questions while people are speaking, go ahead and add them to the Q&A. And when everybody's done speaking, we'll take a moment to go through the questions. So thank you. Rainey.
Hi, I'm sorry that I was having trouble with my connectivity earlier. Let me share my screen. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
It's not as muffled.
No, it sounds good.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick, and it just complements what Christie was saying in her presentation about how they did peacemaking in her community, and she was able to kind of implement that to Zuni. And what I am presenting today is just a short synopsis of how Mescalero is a pilot program and how we just are implementing peacemaking with the Mescalero Apache Tribal Court. And so in working with the Mescalero tribe, we're wanting to have them own the peacemaking program and put it all in using their core values and using their language. And so I'm just sharing just a little bit of what Mescalero has started with. And as Christie shared with you earlier about how the Native American view is versus how the American view is compared to like for Mescalero, and Christie did a really good job in implementing that in their language. So for Mescalero, when they talk about community as a Native American, and for Mescalero Apache, it's Inde, Ichi, Nahe, Ta. That's all the people together. And then for cooperation is Inde, Ichure, Ne. That's people helping each other. That's people cooperating with each other, working together. And then just the relatedness of everything and how everything is connected. We looked for a word that would link things together and how everything is connected, how everything is related. And that's Dafchu Ta. Dafchu Ta is holding each other. The Apache language is very descriptive. So there's not individual words for community or cooperation or relatedness. So that's how we were trying to explain this concept versus the American perspective. And then I just included what Cheryl reiterated earlier about how sovereignty begins at home and how prayer is so important, and how our ancestors and our elders are always giving us that wisdom, sharing that wisdom, and how we project that to other generations, and the importance of just having that knowledge and of course, again, prayer. So all of our peace making circles always begin in prayer. That's always going to be the main focus. Let's see, how do I unshare this? So I'm going to stop share. And then Cheryl, you can go ahead and put your PowerPoint up. But again, my name is Rainey Njadi, and I am from the Mescalero Apache tribe. And like I said, our peacemaking program is a pilot program. I wrote for the grant to get some funding. I spoke with the Mescalero Tribal Court staff, and we were very excited about implementing the program for the community. And we're just working together and learning how to process this and implement this program within that community and make it Mescalero as far as our culture and our tradition and our language. That's the most important. Thank you.
Thank you, Rainey.
Go ahead, Ms. Cheryl.
Okay, thank you. I'm Cheryl Demert Fairbanks, and I'm a peacemaker. I'm originally from Alaska. I'm Tlingit Tsimshian, and Sequatqua Ayahat is my Indian name. I was named by Satkwe of the Tekwanedi, the Raven people, my grandmother. And I'm Tlingit and Tsimshian, and on the Tlingit side, I'm Cha'ak, eagle. And on the Tsimshian side, I'm Lukshibu, house of the wolf. And we always give credit to our outer shell, the opposite clans, and especially to our grandparents. So I just want to remind us, I always say we have 10,000 ancestors standing with us. And it gives me a lot of calm and a lot of peace. You've heard sovereignty begins at home. And I really feel like I was on my way home to Alaska doing a sovereignty circle when I thought, there's a lot we can do at home without looking to the outside. And so what we're asking you to do today is shift out of the box, shift out of our real limited thinking and into the circle and into a unique circle, one that's yours, not a one size fits all. Next. And so when I say shift, it's really shifting from a colonized mind worldview to one that's more indigenous. And I think with the pandemic, and I was working with my mentor, Kinka Ste, who passed, and I was so happy I was putting my work into Tlingit. And he said, Cheryl, you're still thinking in English. You've got to shift that thinking into our own language. And our language is medicinal, and it is healing, and it is alive. And even if you're not fluent, begin speaking it every single day. So getting that shift from a very assimilated mindset, a Western mindset, shifting to one that's more indigenous and one that's yours, one that you have the answer to the test by the way you grew up. And don't make it complicated. And don't put it in an outline, like a law school outline. Make it yours. Make it who you are. Next. And so when I say shift, I think of something that's very sacred and spiritual, where everyone has a chance to speak for themselves, not speaking through a lawyer or an advocate, but really for themselves. And silence is okay. And the holistic part is very important because through the peace circle, we're able to begin healing, and we're beginning to move toward wellness and healing. And it's really issue focused. A lot of times people think, oh, it's very sugar coated. No, there's a lot of depth to it. And we keep reaffirming being gentle on the person and tough on the issue, where we can bring our own indigenous wisdom and language and our core values. And instead of the Indian, you always hear, oh, it's the Indian problem. No, it's the Indian solution. It's the indigenous solution. And so it has to be very facilitated. I just attended one, it was just plunked in, and oh my God, I could feel my stomach going, cha-chum, cha-chum. So you really have to be, careful when you're doing this. So, and think it through. So you're a facilitator, and it's focused on family and community and the community right. And all we want is fundamental fairness. That's all our people want, is fundamental fairness. And we really invoke the rule of respect so that we're transitioning to change. Instead of just putting people away, locking them up, or separating children from families, or elders from families. So we really want that transition so that we're able to use our own tradition and culture and focus on our way of life. Next. And so when I say turn around, I say shift, so that we're placing value on our ways, our tradition, and our culture. And people accuse me of going back to the blanket. I go, yeah, that's right. And it's kind of challenging sometimes because it is placing value on our ways and our tradition and culture, but in a temporary context. And so you have to bring it into the 2022 context. And that's challenging. And so we've been looking to the outside for the answers when all we really have to do is turn around, and we have, and shift our thinking and begin to place value on our own ways and our own people and our own way of life. And we have the answers. We have the answer to the test. Next. And One of the ways to shift is through our language, and it will take some discipline and obedience to the traditions of our ancestors. And my dad always said, if we have our Indian language, we will always have the customs and laws of the tribe. And you'll find that the language becomes very medicinal and very healing and very forgiving. And so we like to weave our language into the peacemaking. Next. And so these are the 5 guiding principles I really just made up because I was struggling so hard with how can we get shift from a Western mindset, a colonial mindset, into one that really respects our tradition and our culture. And I said, we've been facing the wrong way. Hey, we've got to turn around. Just turn around and begin to value that inner circle. And we have to understand the impact that federal policies and the impact that had on Native America. That picture of the kids, that had an impact. And we also have to understand the significance of oral tradition and our own native language as the common law of the tribe. And in doing so, we may have to re-educate the educated. And I'm very proud of my education in our family. Education, as in most Indian tribes, education is really valued. But education was one of the ways to assimilate us. Now it can be the greatest tool to use our education in the Western sense, as well as the traditional Indigenous sense, bringing them together in a powerful way. And so it's a call for consensus, cooperation, comedy, which just really goes to respect, and unity. My dad said he never thought he'd see the day where Indian against Indian. And now that's practically all that's happened within our respective communities. So we have to pause and be tough on the issue, gentle on the person. Next. And these are our core values in Southeast Alaska. Discipline and obedience, respect for self, elders. This is on a, I have it right here. It's on a magnet and it's all different sizes. And we have these in the offices because our elders said, Igu ayachan, be strong in mind, body, and spirit. Be strong and courageous. And so we were losing our values so fast. And even though we're an oral society, the elders felt like we needed to get these core values everywhere. Using our Indian humor. If you're in Indian country, all of a sudden it's real quiet, and then all of a sudden this big blast of laughter. And it is the craziest humor I've ever encountered, but it's what really heals us. And it builds our immunity. So we need to hold each other up. And I do serve on my Supreme Court for Tlingit and Haida, and the Chief Justice really focuses on this. We have to hold each other up because the way the feds and state get to us, or the border towns, is they conquer and divide, and they begin to divide us and then weaken us. And then all of a sudden, we're on the outside looking in. So always speak with care, and to the last one, be strong and have courage. Igu ayachan. They're saying that if I'm speaking, and maybe I'm getting into like when I talk about my dad or grandmother, they'll be saying, be strong and have courage. Okay, next one. So these are the policies that impacted every single one of us. They served to assimilate and terminate. They were very genocidal. And of course, the removal, a lot of our people perished in the long walks. You all know that better than most. And the reservation systems was really, they were designed to civilize us. And the allotment, breaking up the land base and breaking things into allotments. And it was really a concept moving to individualism rather than the collective rights. And the IRA model was really boilerplate constitutions. Our constitution at home is probably the same as Mississippi Band of Choctaw. They were boilerplates. It was like one size fits all. We don't want to replicate that. And the termination era, taking our language, taking our children, relocating our people to the cities, and we're one of the most regulated citizens. Why do I bring this up? Now we're in decision-making positions. Why would we want to replicate these policies that serve to terminate and assimilate us? Unfortunately, we're in the self-determination and self-governance era where there is a real revitalization of our traditional governments, our language, our culture, and way of life. So I bring those up because if we don't know our history, we will tend to replicate what's already been done. So we have to be aware of it. Next. And I say, where are the grandmothers and grandfathers? You know, there are important people in our lives. Next slide. There they are, and that's where they were. And so that has to be acknowledged in terms of truth and reconciliation. If we don't know the truth, we're never going to get to the reconciliation. Like the people of the first light, the in Maine, when they were doing their truth and reconciliation, they wanted to skip right to reconciliation, and that didn't work. And so really understanding what happened is an important piece with the boarding school. I went to boarding school, I was 12. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to go to boarding school. Next. And so should we continue doing more of the same? I mean, we just absolutely replicate and keep doing more of the same. And continuing to do the same thing, but expecting different results, that's insanity. So please rethink your systems. Please rethink how you're relating to each other and bring in our 10,000 ancestors standing with us. Next. So the power of the circle, I wish we were all in circle together. So it's very powerful and it allows each other to experience each other as equals. And I think most importantly for me is in the circle, we've been at the table, but a lot of times our voice hasn't been heard. And so in the circle, everyone's voice is heard. And no one is above or below. People in the circle become united. It has no ending, no beginning. And kind of a synergy forms to bring resolution. And when you're face to face with people, it changes the whole dynamics. And my cousin taught me this, your presence is everything, meaning that you being in that circle, your presence there, your presence is so powerful. And it really lends itself to unity and to bringing resolution. Next, please. And we use the basket to as our talking tool. And you only speak when you have the basket, or like Christie said, the pottery, or whatever you want. I just use the basket because we're weavers. And so it brings the respect and the presence of the tribe. There's a lot of tears and laughter in our baskets. They're very symmetrical. And my grandmother was a weaver. It really brings the mind, body, and spirit of the weaver and the traditions and sovereignty of the tribe. And my grandmother always says, you're that part of that design, that beautiful design, that's you. Without that, it would be flawed. And so it's that balance of respect, of bringing your mind, body, and spirit, your humility, bringing your humility in, but also having the confidence to move forward because you can't stop midstream. And so, okay, it represents sovereignty. And we've used these baskets. I have all kinds of baskets all over. And they empower people to speak. And then they also remind us of our time, you know. So it's a really nice balance. Next. And I already went through this in terms of this has evolved and it's changing, and you should really come up with your own, especially your own rules. And those rules are really based on the core values. I've tried to skip over the core values. Guess what? It doesn't work. If you don't start with the core values, you're going to keep going backwards over and over and over. I've tried peace circles without prayer. It doesn't work. I've tried peace circles without using the core values. It doesn't work. You have to do your homework. And I went over that already. Next. And these are peacemakers from all over the country. And we had a gathering in Texas. It's hard to believe Joaquin, the ICWA case, came out of Texas because we worked so hard with the Supreme Court Texas Permanent Commission on Children. And these two people in the front, the one on the left is senior peacemaker Joanne Batiste, and on the right is Judge Byrne, who serves on the Supreme Court. And Casey Foundation gave him those baby blankets. So we never forget about the 7 generations, about our children. And so what we're doing is really for 7 generations, because someone prayed for us 7 generations ago so we could be here. Next. And so also in the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, in the articles, there's a section where Indigenous people have the right to have their own customs and traditions in their legal systems. And I think it's important that we support the UN and they support us. Next. And we could use it now with what's going on in Ukraine. And so peacemaking is healing. It's consensus. It's listening. There's always disputes, and you're going to be dealing with issues. And so it's an option, and we have it in our DNA, and we've been using it since time immemorial. Next. So I say sovereignty begins at home. Build on what you have already. Build on who we are. Build on our way of life. Build on our prayers. Build on our core values. And next. And my dad always said, if the women are taken care of, the children will be, and our tribes will continue in perpetuity. And that, I think, is something, especially with all the MMIW and MMIP, we really need to focus on our care for our people, our families, and our community. Next. And this, I wanted to end with this gentleman in the back in the blue shirt. He is a peacemaker and an attorney. He was in our clinical class at the law school at University of New Mexico. And the woman in the beige is an adoptee. She was adopted out prior to ICWA. And the first class just went out, tried to reunite her with her family. It just blew up in their face. She was sad. She didn't get to know any of her family. And so we decided to do a peacemaking. And she was adopted by white missionaries. And they were very loving. She had a very, very loving, good home, but she was missing her family, who they were. She had some health issues. And guess what? We used peacemaking. We forgot the basket. So we used a bracelet. And you'll see she gave them, these are her patriarchal aunts. Her father had passed away, but her mother, she got to meet. And so everything was done in Dene. And then these two elders, if Jay didn't say it right in Dene, they'd correct him. And anyway, so the good news is we got her connected with her bio family. She has more relatives than she ever dreamed of. And we also got her enrolled, and we got her connected with some good health. And so I say sovereignty begins at home. Re-educate the educated. Try other ways that will work. Peacemaking is certainly an option. Next. And so you can be the person to be that ripple effect, because there was a lot of resistance. in change. And it's going back to the circle, going back to who we are. And I really learned the peacemaking from my grandmother, Setway. She had 5 sons, and she would just, whenever there was an issue, they'd have a meeting in a circle, I guess, in the living room. It was all in Indian, and you could tell they were not happy, and their voices got a little bit deliberately angry sometimes, but they always came out with resolution and respect for their mother and their language, and they were always able to find resolution. So you can be that person who has that ripple effect in your community. Next. And I say these guys have the ripple effect. That's our Hina Kwan canoe. And all of the Alaskans are gathering in Juneau for celebration. And the canoes came in yesterday, and it was very, very, very powerful. And that's a big peacemaking. Everyone in that canoe, and my son's in there and my cousins, has to be balanced, and they have to have the oneness of thought, and they have to have the respect, and they have to have all of the core values and the discipline and the obedience, because this is very, very safe waters, but they're out there in very treacherous waters. And so they have to have that oneness of thought. And I call them the peacemakers. And when you begin to get into it, you'll see peacemaking all over the place. That, it doesn't have to be outlined like a college law review or something. It's all over our communities. You just have to recognize it, and you'll begin to see circles everywhere. And so next. And so I say thank you, and it's gonna chish. Chish, sometimes we say, just as modern day thank you. And iguayachan means be strong. You be strong and have courage. And yiguayachan means we all can do that together. And so I think that's the end. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to you, Charlene.
Thank you. So before we stop the recording, we have a little bit of extra time, and then we'll go into questions. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about employing peacemaking in your community. As I mentioned, well, the discussion so far has been how tribal courts are using peacemaking. And what I would say is that not all communities have tribal courts, but indeed peacemaking is everywhere, just as Cheryl spoke. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And then I would also like to call out a few things that were mentioned in the presentations. So the first thing is to re-educate the educated. So thank you, Cheryl, for that. And essentially what it means is, if we're thinking about the idea of decolonization, really that means going all the way back. We need to step back and really think about what is peacemaking, what is community, what is inclusion. And we heard some different definitions today about what that is, and turning that into your own language. But then after you turn it into your own language, what does it mean to your own community, and how do you bring those ideas back? So I can give you an example that actually happened just over the weekend. So we're at a gathering, and it's a large gathering. So this is an annual gathering, the first time since COVID that we've been able to get together. And I will say there were literally thousands of people there, at least a couple thousand people at this gathering. And it was time for our group. Ohlone people come from many different villages in all different regions in the California Bay Area. And one of our groups was going to dance. And it was a little chaotic, and part of it is because there was divisiveness amongst some of the different groups, but they were all there, which to me, as the peacemaker, I don't really care what group you're from. I just see everybody and I'm already glowing. Well, these skills, as Ms. Cheryl mentioned, they just happen. They just occur. Peacemaking is in us. And it's just a matter of reminding ourselves of that and then jumping into action, right? And so in this case, I looked around and I thought, oh my gosh, like everybody is here. This is amazing. This is beautiful. I couldn't see the glow on the opposite side, but I thought we're going to fix this. So I went to a few of the different groups and I said, you know, hey, you know, we're going to circle up. Would you mind coming over before the dancers go on? We want to send them into the arbor in a good way, and I'd like for you to come. Well, they get really excited, but I did, you know, out of fairness, say, by the way, I'm inviting everybody. So you might see somebody on the other side of the circle that you don't get along with, but this is so much bigger than anything that's going on there. I still want to invite everybody to come in. And if you'd be willing to just sit there, we're going to do some prayers. We're going to sing some songs. We're going to put the last paint on our dancers. Is that okay? So one by one, going to these people that, you know, might not otherwise have felt comfortable, and inviting them into the circle was the beginning. And just long story short, by going through the process, by saying the prayers, by acknowledging some of the differences and saying, this is a new day, we're going to start over. We're not going to go back right now. Healing needs to be done. We need to have a circle. We're not doing it right this second, but let's just start with a prayer. Let's gather and let's start with a prayer. And then whoever feels comfortable, join the dancers in the arbor. You can stand on the side and everybody will support them with the songs that we all know, that we all share. And as we went around and did our prayers and staged ourselves off with, you know, some songs and did what we needed to do, tears flowed. We invited supporters in, you know, even for example, there was a woman that comes in and she's really trying to teach her daughters, but her husband is not Native and he always stands on the outside. At the same time, I see him shuffling these kids all over the place. He's driving them wherever they need to go. And I said, you, sir, would you mind joining the circle? And the wife just cried and he cried, because we can't leave people out. They're part of our community. They're part of our support. And so when you think about peacemaking for a moment, just think about all of the opportunities to include the strategies that were just talked about, and really full-heartedly thinking about how to teach people those strategies. So you're planting these seeds everywhere of peacemaking, all these strategies, so that though they can take them back to their community, to their family. And again, we start at home. We start at home. Just as we were listening and what we heard, we start at home. And then the last thing I'll share is about the language. And I know Christie and Rainey know this about me, but the Ohlone language, there are not any fluent Ohlone language speakers. And we're learning, there are some language speakers, but they're not fluent. And there are a lot of Ohlone songs that we use to bring ourselves back. And it all has to do with the history of the region, right? And the mission system. But I spent the last couple of weeks listening to some recordings of the wax cylinders that recorded our languages when they thought that they were going to disappear altogether. And I was listening carefully to them because, and you have to listen carefully because they're really, really hard to hear, meaning the wax cylinders are old, they weren't well protected, the language is broken up. Anyways, as I was listening to it and thinking, okay, you know, I have some written language, I have something of a dictionary that I put together, and I'm going to use some of my language, but I'm going to use more in public. I use it all in private. I need to use it more in public. So I'm thinking about all of this stuff. And as I was listening to the recording, I thought, you know, the first step here, if you're Indigenous and you're in a circle and you often hear people say, ho, or they say, aho. Well, they didn't say that in Ohlone culture. Like none of the recordings say that. They'll end theirs with a. It's a really short a. And I laugh because it reminds me of people that I speak, elders, some that are past, when they're done speaking, they don't say any of that. Or when they're done with the prayer, they don't say any of that. They'll do a prayer. And if people are confused because they're all of a sudden silent, they'll just say, and that's all. Or that's the end. but they'll say it like that in English. And I thought, well, of course they're saying that, because if you listen to the recordings, the end was just said, hey. So that's their translation of hey. Anyways, the whole point is think about stepping back. One of the things that Cheryl, you mentioned was, what was it? I can't remember what you said, but you did talk about circling back and stepping back, and kind of starting over. And that's kind of what we have to do. It's much more than re-educate the educated, right? It's way much more than that. It's really like thinking about how problems could be solved better, how to be more inclusive. So I just wanted to share those things as food for thought. Now, if we have any questions, we do have one question in the queue, but if you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the chat or put them in the queue, and we'll go ahead and start. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording. So, any questions?